times higher than what women are being told.
And I can't remember the study, excuse me, it was released in 2009. It was by a big independent conglomeration of researchers that determined that from the age of 40 to 50, breast cancer screening through mammography it does zero good.
Right.
But we're still told that you should start your screening at the age 40, even though this independent study said it doesn't do any good.
Well, and here's another thing, is if we look at it logically, we know that the problem with the breast cancer susceptibility genes, right, BRCA1 and 2, is that it confers greater risk for DNA damage in the breast tissue, because the BRCA proteins actually protect you from things like radiation damage. So if you are not being screened for BRCA1 and 2 before getting exposed to these X-ray through mammography, then technically you're not being given informed consent and you're being put in harm's way in a way that's very unethical.
And you look at a situation like Angelina Jolie,
Yes.
that had these genes and did a preventive mastectomy
Yes.
because of this.
Yeah.
Talk about, that's something they probably didn't tell her.
Well, there's a problem because in the mainstream culture and of course the media, they talk about BRCA1 and 2 variations as if they're, quote, mutations. We think back to comic book era stuff where someone's being exposed to nuclear reactor waste and it just turns them into like some incredible Hulk or something.
I used to wish that I could be exposed so I could be the Hulk.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's not what's happening, because these single nucleotide polymorphisms called SNPs are variations from a norm. So generally, maybe 1% or less of a population might have a variation. There's already been 1,000 different SNPs identified for the BRCA genes, whereas we talk about it as if it's one thing and it just confers a certainty of increased risk for breast cancer. It's not like that. Some of the variations have shown to confer survival advantage from breast cancer. So technically, if you really look at the literature, you'll find no unequivocal proof that if you have the, quote, mutations, and again, there are literally hundreds of them, it does not give you a death sentence, and it doesn't require you take any kind of dramatic intervention like prophylactic mastectomy.
That's something that Angelina should have known and probably didn't.
Right, I think she was profoundly misinformed about what risk is, because when we're doing prognosis, we are doing what is basically taking a crystal ball and reading the future based on truly the failures of what the conventional system has already created. So if they think that, for example, you have some really bad pancreatic cancer and you have a 6-month, likelihood you're going to be, alive, then they're just talking about all their failures using chemoradiation. You talk to someone like Nicholas Gonzalez in New York City, and he's healing people that are on their deathbed using things like vegetable juicing, enzymes. Those cases will never be recorded in their statistics. So that's when they come to you and they say, well, you're going to die in 6 months. And that's when the power of belief really starts affecting the outcome.
Talk about that belief and emotions in cancer. And then after that, you mentioned Dr. Gonzalez and enzymes. I want you to go into that. But let's talk about belief and emotions first.
Absolutely. This is one of the most powerful studies of our time, published in the New England Journal of Medicine just 3 years ago, which showed, based on a huge group of Swedes, we're talking about 500,000 in this study, that when they were given the results for their cancer test, looking at different types of cancers, and if they were told positive, what happened is that within 1 week of that diagnosis, they had up to 26.9-fold increased risk of death from heart-related events.
Just from the diagnosis, just from the emotional, mental effect.
Exactly. There's no way of knowing whether it was an accurate diagnosis, because again, what we're talking about is we're getting a lot of overdiagnosis of lesions that are benign being basically identified as being cancer when they're not. So what happens is it's like a shaman in an old culture pointing a bone at a member and saying, you're gonna die tomorrow. That person is so convinced that that authority is so valid that they go walk off into the woods and the next day they die. Exactly proven by this new study. The power of belief and what they call the nocebo effect, which is if your physician who you trust more than your own self-healing ability comes in and says, you're gonna die, look at these results, you have 6 months, guess what? You're probably going to end up dying. But what this study showed was that the belief is so powerful, your actually heart fails on you within 1 week. It just crashes. You die because of your belief. And it's not based on evidence. It's based on the belief that someone else knows your fate better than yourself. And that is why we have to be extremely careful about conventional medicine and this type of diagnosis.
You mentioned nocebo effect. What is nocebo effect?
Yeah, the placebo effect is really I will help, basically, because if you believe your physician, like your mother who's taking care of you, is going to heal you with her.
Gives you a sugar pill.
Exactly. The same thing is true, is that if you believe, or your doctor comes to you and you feel a negative vibe, or you think they don't like you, or they think you're going to die, it means I will harm. It means you believe that, you incorporate it into your life, your belief system, feeds into your physiology, and then you end up having an adverse effect or dying.
So the nocebo effect.
Nocebo
It's
effect.
like the flip side of that coin.
It's the exact opposite.
Placebo is positive, nocebo is negative.
It's true, and it also tells us that physicians have an ethical and medical responsibility to be aware of their affect, to be aware of their belief system, and realize if they're quoting from some statistical data set of poor outcomes based on really outdated cancer therapies, let's say it's radiation and chemo, which is just absurd ultimately, it's on them. They have to educate themselves, and they should be inculcating into the patient a belief in the healing power that they have. If they don't know, I understand, they weren't trained on this, but they should probably be doing something else than treating people with cancer if they don't know that.
Right, I agree. I mean,
Yeah.
to me that's almost equivalent to a crime to have a cancer patient be diagnosed and tell them they're going to die, because you've just sentenced them to death.
Exactly, and it's no longer just a bunch of people on the periphery like us saying, you know, you got to do better. It's New England Journal of Medicine, one of the highest impact journals, stating that this is a lethal force. Nocebo effect is as real as the placebo. They are responsible for what they say, what they know, and they should never pronounce someone dead based on statistics of an outdated way of treating people with cancer.
Emotions have a huge impact on cancer diagnosis
Absolutely.
and treatment, don't they?
And belief, because ultimately when we liberate ourselves from believing in the priest of the body and realize the placebo effect is the basis for evidence-based medicine, they have to control for it, for even to have this sort of hierarchical power structure saying that they have the evidence and the truth, right? Double-blind, randomized, placebo-controlled trials. That's the absolute truth in their model. Well, why are they controlling for the placebo? It's so powerful. It's even more powerful than most of the medications they're using. And so what the placebo is basically this self-healing ability that I've now outsourced to you because you're the doctor, I believe in you. When you tell someone that their body is constantly self-healing, they can overcome cancer in the same way that they may have a scratch on their knee and they can watch it heal, and they believe that, they do the right things, then they will heal cancer. And that is really the power that we have, that the medical profession really doesn't either know, they either don't know it or they don't want you to know about it.